about to experience a life-changing moment. You won't leave the same way you came, 'cause He's in our very midst. You will be healed, delivered. He's here to set you free. And because God is here, anything can happen in here, in here, in here. Because anything can happen in here, in here, in here. You are about to experience a life-changing moment. You won't leave the same way you came, 'cause He's in our very midst. You will be healed, delivered. He's here to set you free. And because God is here, anything can happen in here, in here, in here. Because anything can happen in here, in here, in here. This moment is designed for God to change your life. This moment is designed for God to change your life. This moment is designed for God to change your life. The heavens are open, the portals are open, my spirit is open for God to do anything, oh anything, oh the heavens are open, hey the portals are open, and my spirit is open for God to do anything, oh anything. Declare and say the heavens are open, hey the portals are open, oh my spirit is open for God to do anything, because anything can happen in here, in here, in here. Because anything can happen in here, in here, in here. Because anything can happen in here. Hallelujah.
Wow, indeed anything can happen in here. The portals are open, our spirit is open, and heaven is also open. Wherever you are, gather your family and friends, because indeed the portals are open, and there's going to be a great deposit in your life. Shall we pray? Father, we thank you so much for today. Once again, we gather to hear from you. Speak your word of life to us, that we shall be agents of transformation in our generation, that we shall stand before kings, that we shall rule on the face of this earth. Our heart desire, our cry today, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in all the earth. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. Turn your Bible to John chapter 17, and I'm continuing my series on to transform or to conform. Next week, I shall bring it to a conclusion, but we have talked about who we are in the kingdom and what God wants to do with us. His focus is that his kingdom will come on this earth, and he's sending us out into the world as light into this world and as salt into our earth. In John chapter 17, verse 17 and 18, it says, sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. As thou hast sent me into the world, even so have I also sent them into the world. The same way Jesus Christ was sent into this evil world, is the same way all of us are sent into our world. Not to conform, not to integrate into the world, but to be agents of transformation. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. We are sent as sheep among wolves, and so we need to discern the times and be wise. Over the past few weeks, we have spoken about engaging the world, not bowing to the world system, not bowing to Nebuchadnezzar, but standing up as agents of God's kingdom and bringing about his divine purposes on this earth. As part of the trajectory, we shall enter into what I call the palace environment. It is a place of opportunity, it is a place of favor, and it is a place of power. The palace is not the throne. It prepares you for the throne. Remember, you have a calling to be the head and not the tail. And so when you get to the palace, you have not arrived. It is only part of the process and the journey. You are in the corridors of power, but it is not the throne. Many people get into the palace and they make the mistake of thinking they have arrived, and they are derailed and never get to the throne. Remember last week we said, and we said that your own achievements prior to entering the palace can be your undoing. And so you must learn how to manage yourself wisely amongst wolves and in the palace. So you find out that David, for example, had achieved a lot of great things, and he had killed Goliath. But before he entered the palace, the women had begun to sing and ascribe unto David 10,000 and to Saul thousands. And from that day, Saul eyed David from that moment forward. This is a young man who is beginning to find favor, but he's also walking into a line mine that can be very difficult. How do you engage? How do you manage yourself when God begins to bring you into that place of power? I want us to read a verse from 1 Samuel chapter 18 from verse 5. 1 Samuel chapter 18 from verse 5. What does it say? And David went out whithersoever Saul sent him, and behaved himself wisely. And Saul set him over the men of war, and he was accepted in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. Wherever Saul sent David, David went. He had been moved from a place of low esteem into a place of favor. He had served faithfully looking after sheep. Now he's gone into the palace. He doesn't forget that he's a servant, and he still serves faithfully. And so look at the testimony. Wherever Saul sent him, David went. The second thing about David, he behaved himself wisely. His transition from among sheep into a place, sheep couldn't kill him. But his transition from a place of animals and docile animals that must be led into a place where they are human beings, and some of them are going to attempt tricks on his life. But the Bible says he behaved himself wisely. The third thing is that Saul set him over the men of war. So the people David was going to live were not novices. These were accomplished men of war who didn't know him. He was not known as a man of war. He was known as a man who had killed lions and killed sheep. But this was his first time into the general army, and yet he has been set over men who are more experienced than him, and yet David behaves himself wisely. Look at the next thing. He says, and he was accepted in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. How do you get a people you don't know? How do you get a people who may envy you? How do you get a people who were there before you and who know more than you to accept you? David behaved himself wisely. It is important for us to understand how we transition in through these various stages. We have looked at the examples of Daniel, Nehemiah, Esther, Moses. And we've seen that all of them started from a position of slavery or servant in a palace, and yet were able to rise up to the very top where they influenced other people. How did they do it? Last week I began to share with you, and I spoke about 4 things. Number 1 is to learn the palace language. The first thing you learn when you begin to enter the corridors of power is to moderate your speech. Learn how to speak well. You cannot take the street language into the palace. There are people who are there before you. There are people who are older than you. There are people who have had more experience than you. There are people who also want the position you have. You have to be wise and behave yourself wisely. Do not just be so excited with your promotion that you forget that there may be people whose position or who want the position you occupy. Avoid bad pastoralist language like, I am better than the king. I know your achievements brought you into the palace, but you don't trump up your achievements and boast and spite other people with your achievements. Let other people do it for you. Avoid the language of criticisms and laziness, where every time you are sent, oh, this is not my job, let somebody do it. The Bible says that David went wherever Saul sent him. He was not just limited in a particular scope, but he was still a servant of the king, and whatever the king wanted, he would do it. Be very careful about challenging people and criticizing people and offering advice. It is important. What you should do in the palace, in your language, is to prefer alternative solutions in humility rather than stamping it in people's places. There is a language and a tone and expression that is acceptable when it's coming from a superior person or somebody in a higher position. So, for example, your boss or the king may speak to you in a certain way. That language is inappropriate for you to speak back in the same tone. So your boss may see you and say, hey, come here. You cannot also look at your boss and say the same thing to him. So the fact that you hear certain or you see certain examples does not mean you copy the same things. You learn. Learning is different from copying. And so you learn and see the people who say what they say, why they say what they say, the authority they have by which they say the things they say, and you moderate your speech. You must avoid a language of pride and resistance. The second thing you do is to form strategic alliances with the gatekeepers and with the door openers. In every kingdom, there are people you meet like Aspenas in Daniel's court, or in Nebuchadnezzar's court, or somebody like Haggai in the court of King Ahasuerus, whom Esther needed. Those are the people who will open the door and allow you to access the king. You've got to learn how to form strategic alliances. David formed a strategic alliance with Saul's son called Jonathan, and that saved his life and allowed him to escape the wrath of the king. The third thing is to serve and to keep serving, so you caught favor. You were employed or you enter into the palace as a slave servant. You must now rise up and become an honorable servant by choice, still delighting in serving the king. As you get closer to the throne, serve more freely, serve more willingly, and serve more excellently. Accept challenging assignments that others are running away from, and so that you will court favor with Aspenas and with Haggai. It was Haggai's instruction that made Esther appear favorable before the king. So you've got to understand who to listen to and who to court favor from, and serve harder. Things that people are not willing to do, volunteer to do them, especially when you are a servant. It will bring you favor before your boss. Don't just be excited about, it's time, I've closed, I'm leaving, I have other things to do. You see, the person who will open the door and open the gate for you to stand before great men must find you diligent. We read last week, do you see a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings and not before mean men. The fourth thing we talked about was to master your trade and prove to be 10 times better in a system that is designed against you. You are a slave in a foreign land. There are wise men, there are astrologers, there are kings. You are entering as a stranger. That is not your country. You don't have citizenship rights. And yet, if you want to be able to negotiate, work harder, be more excellent. When the king interviewed Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, the Bible says he found them 10 times better than all his wise men and astrologers. Even if the system is set up against you, Jesus Christ said, if you will not believe me, the words that I speak, they testify. Whether you are an accountant, whether you are a plumber, whether you are a tailor, whatever you do, let your works speak for you. They may not like your surname. They may not like your location and where you come from. They may not even find you handsome. But when they speak to you, they find you 10 times better than all the people they know. They will come for you. So it is important, if you want to survive in the palace, to be able to learn how to master your trade. The palace is not for people who are inept, people who make mistakes, people who are lackadaisical, and people who are lazy. The palace is a place of excellence. So all the people who enter into the palace are chosen. Now, if you have got into the palace and you must be 10 times better, it means you work hard. You don't leave your job and you don't leave what you are supposed to do and just run off because you have to go elsewhere. You serve the king. You live for the king. You've got to understand that we seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all other things shall be added. Today we continue, and I speak about the fifth one. The fifth thing to do in the palace is to remember to keep proven authority figures in your life. Remember to keep proving authority figures in your life. And I use the words carefully. Number one, proven. Number two, authority figures. Not people who are just older, but people who are very theologically sound, like Mordecai. So even though Esther had been made greater than Mordecai in terms of the fact that she was the wife of the king now, she still remembered Mordecai and allowed Mordecai to speak to her because she trusted in Mordecai's theology and Mordecai's thinking. You know, sometimes as you begin to enter the corridors of power, it is easy for you to shun people who have helped you and advised you and prayed with you and supported you and taught you to become who you are. But look at Esther. Even in the palace, she's now the most influential woman in the palace. And yet, she still remembers Mordecai. And Mordecai can still access her and give her advice. Don't throw away certain relationships in your life just because today you are a chief executive. Don't throw away certain relationships in your life just because you've stepped into a place of favor where Mordecai doesn't step in. You will be greater, but keep him and learn from his experience and his expertise. At a time when it matters, you need a Mordecai in your life. And just a word of caution, if you are Mordecai also, do not be frustrated by the success of Esther. Keep and practice your faith. I believe that Esther practiced her faith because there was a Mordecai who was always ensuring that she was still abiding to the tenets of her faith. She was still prayerful. She still believed in the one God in a foreign land. She still prayed. She still surrendered to authority. And she still behaved herself wisely because there was an older, proven authority figure in her life. The sixth thing to do in the palace is to forget your pain, your past pain, and bury your personal agenda and serve the king. If you want to explode in the palace, the pain that brought you into the palace as a slave, you've got to learn to shelve it and put it behind. The pain that made you as a prisoner in a foreign land, you've got to learn how to deal with it and manage it. You cannot carry bitterness in the palace. You cannot carry bitterness and let it affect everybody around you and be moody and always be infecting people with the pain of your past. There comes a time you've got to drop your pain as an excess baggage so that you can move on in life. I know you may have had bitter experiences. It was not your fault that you were sold. It was not your fault that you are a slave now, but you cannot let that pain take you into your future. Bury your personal agenda and serve the king. Pick your fights carefully and do not spend all your energy fighting. Even in pain, when you are right, remember, you are entering into the palace as a servant and as a slave. Some people are going to maltreat you. Some are going to shout at you. You will be misunderstood. I know it is your inalienable right to defend yourself, but you cannot spend all your energy fighting because as a servant and as a slave, you will lose. So sometimes, even when you are right, you let it go. Why? Because you want to stay in the palace and enjoy. You don't want to go back to the slave quarters. You don't want to go back into Egypt. You want to stay in the palace. And so sometimes you get a job and you are being maligned. Somebody is talking to you in a tone you don't like. Somebody is shouting at you and calling you names. You see, because you have a future and you know where you are going to, you tolerate it. Because at that time, you are a servant and a slave. If as a servant or a new employee, you try to talk back and fight for your rights, you may lose your job. So you manage your emotions, not because the other person is right. Every slave will be maltreated. Every servant will be shouted at. But if you want to get into your palace and sit on your throne, sometimes you learn to hold your peace. Not because the other person is right, but for yourself. You have children. If you lose your job, what happens to your children? If you lose your job, what happens to your family? And so, even in pain, when you are right, it does not mean you will win. Some fights will only derail you and set you back. Some fights are totally unnecessary and time wasting. And you've got to learn how to avoid those. I want to read a verse in 1 Peter chapter 2 from verse 17 just to explain this thing about bearing your personal agenda and serving the king. 1 Peter chapter 2 from verse 17, it says, honor all men. How many people? All men. What must you do to them? Give them honor. Honor them. Number 2, love the brotherhood. Fear God. Number 3, honor the king. That's another whole message. But verse 18, servants. Now he's addressing people in a servant position. He says, servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the forward. Wow. I thought anybody who was in your office, who came up against you, you had a right to fight back. But the Bible says, be subject to all of them in all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but to the people who don't like you. Verse 19. Why? For this is thankworthy, if a man for conscience toward God endure grief, suffering wrongly. Okay. If a man for conscience, good conscience toward God, he endures it. Look at somebody, tell the person, endure grief. Tell your family members, endure grief. It says, it is thankworthy. It is thankworthy if a man for conscience toward God endure grief, suffering wrongly. For what glory is it if when you are buffeted for your faults, you take it patiently? You see, so when you do the wrong thing, you are being punished. You are patient. But if when you do well and suffer for it, take it patiently. Why? For this is acceptable to God. It means that God knows that you are being maltreated as a servant. You've been lied to and you've been thrown in jail without no fault of yours. You've been sold as a slave and you have to now serve a foreign king through no fault of yours. But God says there's a behavior. You have no idea his purposes and his plans. It may be a place to take you to your throne, for you to experience some things in Potiphar's house. You will never have had that opportunity in your own home. But you've come into as a stranger into Potiphar's house to understand the etiquettes in a big man's house, in a place of opportunity and favor and power. And obviously, Potiphar and his wife may have an agenda, but you learn how to endure it because there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger picture than your pain. There's a bigger picture than what you are going through. Some of the people who brought the best out in me were people at that time I didn't like. But because of who they were, they made me punctual. They made me write well. They made me learn how to dress well, because everything I did, they found fault with it and they criticized it. But in the midst of all that, it forged something out in my life. It says, what glory is it if when you are buffeted for your faults, you take it patiently? But if when you do well and suffer for it, this is acceptable with God. Verse 21. For even hereto were you called. Say with me, I have a calling. Because Christ Jesus also suffered for us, leaving us an example that we should also follow his steps. Who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. Who, when he was reviled not again. And when he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously. I can imagine Esther and Joseph. I can imagine Daniel not understanding the transitions they are going through, but in all these things, lifting up their eyes and trusting God. I can imagine Jesus Christ on the cross. When he's being buffeted and being pierced, he lifts up his hands and says, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. I don't understand what is happening, but my prayer life, my faith, believes something bigger than my current. As a church, many of you know our story and what we've been through, but it has forged something greater, a life of prayer, a life of resilience, a life of forging ahead, because you cannot go back. When you suffer wrong, it is thankworthy and it's acceptable with God. So let's go back. The seventh thing you learn to do in the palace is you study to be quiet. Study. The word study means look carefully, be diligent, observe. So there are times you want to talk in the palace. There are times you've seen things in the palace. But the Bible says, study to be quiet. Study to hold your mouth. Study not to let some things come out of your mouth. Because you are entering into a place of favor. You will hear things that are not said on the streets. You will see things that you will never see in the streets. And some of them are just for the palace. So look at David. He enters into the palace. He's the one who is playing the instruments for Saul. He's one of the few people who knows that Saul actually has a demon. Outside in the public, everybody knows Saul as king. But in the palace, David sees Saul demonized. And he's the one who's casting the demons out every time. What does he do? Go out on the streets and broadcast. The person you think is a great person, he's demonized. No, but David keeps quiet. David keeps quiet. You see, you'll be trusted. You'll be tested and trusted. At a certain place, people pay you for keeping quiet. As a pastor, the things I hear, the things people call me and talk about, you keep quiet. Immediately you start talking. You even try and pretend that it's a prophecy and come and start in church and prophesy. You lose trust. And trust is the glue that holds relationships together. If you lose it, you don't go far. So learn how to keep quiet. Look at Esther. She's a Jew. She's in the king's palace. Nobody knows she's a Jew. She marries the king. Even the king who has married her still does not know that Esther is a Jew. Because there are things you keep quiet. There are businesses you are starting, sometimes you keep quiet. Remember, Joseph started having problems by talking. Dreams that he shouldn't have said to his brothers. When he said it, he derailed his life for 17 years. There are things you are doing, sometimes you just keep it yourself. There are places you are going, you keep it yourself. There are projects you are undertaking, you learn how to keep it yourself. Because you say to the wrong person, you lose trust. Sometimes it's easy to say, Charlie, come and listen to the latest film. When I went here on social media, I was there. But you are putting yourself in a position where nobody now wants you to be there again because they don't know what you say behind them and reveal to the public. Let your faith make you better and outshine others. Other people may talk, but you keep quiet. Other people may speak, but you keep quiet. No comment. Because you study to be quiet. You study to be quiet. You may see accounts, you may see people's salaries, you may see people's projects. Especially, the king wants somebody he can trust. The people in authority want people they can trust and they can send. You learn how to manage and moderate your speech by keeping quiet. Number 8. Serve with distinction and a spirit of excellence. The higher you go, the more it is demanded of you. I've seen people who, when they were in the slave mentality, they served well, but immediately they were promoted, they stopped serving. But you see, in the palace, the higher you go, the more it is imposed upon you to serve more excellently. As you get nearer the king, the reason why you are getting nearer the king is because excellence is being found in you. It means that you are no longer reckless. Can you imagine Nehemiah as the cupbearer not being excellent and diligent and allow somebody to slip something into the king's drink? Or you are mixing a concoction and you mix the compounds disproportionately. What is supposed to give health will now become poison and lead to death. So as you grow higher, you've got to be more exact. When you are younger and you are preaching, there are things you can say and get away with it. But as you mature in the ministry, there are things you will not get away with theologically. You've got to be more precise. You've got to be more excellent. The singers must become more excellent. Prayer warriors must become more excellent. Pastors become more excellent. The more we grow, the more we offer excellent service to our King. A seamless, excellent service to the King of Kings. Look at how long it had to take Esther to prepare herself to meet the king for one night. So they will present her without blemish before a human king. The longer you stay, if you want to be noticed by king, and you are a cook, you are a chef, you are a butler, excellence. Serve with distinction. Take away all those moods. Avoid bad practices and habits that undermine the king. Anything that gives life is done with precision. Anything. Any drug, if you change the compound element and combination, it changes from a healthy drug into something poisonous that kills. If you are a cook cooking for the king, your mixtures and your measurements must be precise and excellent, consistent. You wonder why many people don't stand in the palace, because today it is 80%, tomorrow it is 40%, the next time it is 75%, another time it is 105%. There's no consistency and excellence about what they do every time. When you stand to minister, there must be some consistency. There are footballers, when you put them in a match, you know there'll be consistency. There are others you're not too sure. But whoever you are, there must be something consistent and excellent about your life. If you are ever going to be the cupbearer of the king, if you are ever going to stand before the king and interpret his dreams, let him find you 10 times better. Some people get into the palace, and as they are promoted, they develop bad practices and habits. They are now reckless, they have bad attitudes, they undermine the king, and they steal. No. Any bad habits that you have, please, as you grow, drop them. They will cost you. Maybe when you were a child, you were reckless. As you grow up, you cannot be reckless and leave your files when there's a meeting. You are going for a very important meeting. You cannot be forgetful. You are going for a meeting that starts at 7. You cannot get there at 7:30. You serve with distinction. There must be consistent thing about you. As for that person, every time at 8 o'clock, he'll be there. Forget about traffic, forget about excuses. Serve with distinction and serve with excellence. Number 9. The 9th negotiation point and think behavior that is accepted in the palace is what I call grow and mature your statecraft. Grow and mature your statecraft. You entered into the palace as a servant. You were raw. But if you are going to remain in the palace, there are things that you must put away. David was living with sheep, and I'm sure dressing like a shepherd. Now he's in the palace. He has to change his clothes. Esther is a slave, but if you are going to stand before the king, you have to change your clothes and your smell and your perfume. You have to now look after your personal hygiene. You have to moderate your speech, your physical appearance, the things you wear. So you cannot say, I don't have, you must have. So now you begin to do what is called personal investment. Why? Because you are going up. You were a junior worker, you are being promoted into senior management. You cannot dress like a junior worker and enter into senior management. You have been invited to a wedding feast. You cannot wear any dress lest you be cast out. So it is important to begin to mature in statecraft. What do I mean? Is the ability to wisely manage your own life within the context of power. You must balance your faithful service to the king and at the same time keep yourself from trouble. Now people are going to whisper things to you. Some people are even going to report you to the king, things you do outside. You must learn how to manage people around you. There are people who are aggrieved servants who don't want you to do well. Remember Daniel? In the palace, there were people who were plotting to throw him in fire. It was not people outside. There were people who were angry enough to report him to the king and put him in a lion's den. Don't be naive. Don't think because you are getting closer and you are doing well, everybody likes you. There are people who are just happy and excited to report and give bad speech and say things about you. How do you manage yourself within the context of this environment? The Bible says that, and David was accepted by all men. How do you manage it? You are building a house. You've just bought a car. I was surprised many years ago to find out that not everybody is happy with you and with what you are doing. Even though you are serving the Lord, the demons are not happy with you. So you've got to be wise. Watch the sin of familiarity. Now that you are getting closer to the top, it is easy for you to begin to think that you have arrived. Now you ignore protocols. Now when you enter your boss's office, you don't greet him, you say, Charlie, how? You pass by him and ignore him. No. You see, behave yourself wisely. Still serve. Don't ever lose that servant spirit. Jesus Christ said, if anybody wants to be great amongst you, let him be your servant. I know you are my apostles. You've left the believers. You've left the new converts. You've left the new discipleship classes. Now you are pastors and apostles and also my friends. But you must still behave yourself wisely. There's a speech that is unacceptable. Sometimes when you are before the king and you are speaking, you are receiving phone calls because you become familiar. Sometimes the king is speaking, you interject. I beg to differ. I have a different opinion. You see, remember you are not on the throne. You are there to help. You don't disagree with him openly and publicly and embarrass him. What do you disagree with? That you can stand up and say, I disagree. As for me, I disagree. I beg to differ. Sorry, you will lose your place. You may have gone high and become a Judas, one of the 12 disciples on the face of the earth who walked with Jesus. But you lose your position because you thought you could now speak openly and open your mouth. But you've got to learn how to avoid mistakes. You've got to learn how to, he's talking to you and you walk off in anger. You see, always remember, I've seen people who have gotten to the top and lost everything just because they could not manage their emotions in the palace. Avoid the trappings of power. Humble yourself and remember Mordecai. And remember the Jews who also keep your faith, who also believe the same God you believe. And remember them, that you are there for such a time as this. You are not just there for yourself. If you succeed, more of the Jews will have access. If you fail, the Jews will be stopped. You see, your success is bigger than yourself. If I work hard and I do well, my children and my children's children are taken out of poverty. If I fail, my children will go back. And my children's children. So I cannot make some mistakes as I go up. I've got to be more careful. Why? Because I'm preparing for my throne. Look at Joseph. After spending his prime years in jail, when he comes out, you think he will be bitter. He will be angry. But when he gets on the throne, he doesn't take it as an agenda to pursue the people who put him in prison. He's put his past pain behind. He's not vindictive. He's looking forward into the future. There are things you drop in the palace. And before the king, there are some behaviors. Remember, the king can just fire you. He's the king. Remember, the king can just put you back in servant quarters. He is the king. Remember, it is the king who has to promote you, whether you are Haman or Mordecai. Why? He is the king. He's the one you please. If we are going to become the head and not the tail in an environment that is designed against us, we have to learn to behave ourselves wisely. Wisely. Stay within your ranks and your mandates. Always remember your humble beginnings. David was promised the king's daughter, but he didn't go chasing after her, even when Saul didn't keep his word. He waited patiently. Know where your mandate ends. The king has privileges that you don't have. Sometimes, interestingly, you find people who were ordinary Ghanaians, like you and I, who have been put into a position of privilege, and they are not the king. In this country, there's only one president. He's the only person who, when he comes and he speaks, he can say certain things. Fellow Ghanaians, you are an assistant, deputy, assemblywoman. When you are also giving the mic, you want to imitate what the king does and talk the way the king does. You are not the king. You see, when you start behaving like that, people's eyes will come on you. They will fight and truncate your rise. There are people who aspire to be presidents. They will never become presidents because they have revealed themselves too early. They've exposed themselves. So you've got to learn how to behave yourself. Stay within your ranks. There's a car your boss drives. Don't try to drive that car. There's a way your boss talks. You are just in the palace. You are not your boss. As a pastor, because of a privileged position I stand and my relationship with a lot of you, for example, there's a head of nuclear medicine in this church. I can call him, Ankara, come. If you hear me calling him by that name and you also are a cell leader and you are given a microphone and you come and stand here and say, Ankara, you will find out that there are different levels and monkeys fight by sizes. So you don't imitate. My car is nicer than my boss. I dress better than him. Okay. I know more than him. It's the beginning of your downfall. Because the crowd will sing, David has killed his 10,000 and Saul has killed his 1,000. But Saul will begin to eye you. It is important. There's only one person in this country who should drive with a motorcade. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry is driving a car. Beep, 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 beep. And then CTFM arrests you. And you are embarrassed on air. And you find out that Obia on a level. It's important to manage ourselves wisely as we grow. If you are going to occupy the head position, you start from down, but you are going to manage yourself wisely. You are going to grow and mature in your statecraft. If you want, seek permission. There are people who go behind their boss or go behind the king, like, is it Gehazi? You are working with your prophet, and then you go behind the prophets and try and do things. You see, if you want to make friends with the king, seek permission from the king to relate with his friends. When Nehemiah was going to build the broken walls, he had to seek permission from the king, and the king wrote a letter before he went to collect wood and traveled back to his town. Don't go behind the king and try and be negotiating things. When you are caught, you will move from where you are back to slave quarters in prison. There are privileges only for the king. If you take advantage of every little thing, you lack palace protocols. You will not survive. Do not interject or publicly disagree with the king. Always make the king look better. And let him find pleasure in you. For his pleasure, we are created. This is God. So may our lives give him pleasure. We can never be God. I can never be God. So there's a position that only comes to God. There are things that you say and you do only for God. And I must never take it for myself. Like John the Baptist, let him increase and let me decrease. Finally, the 10th one is to honor the king. The 10th, honor the king. Look at somebody, say, honor the king. The word honor means service at the highest level with cheerful hearts that solves problems for the king and makes the kingdom of the king grow. So even if you fight a battle, you honor the king. Joab won a lot of wars, but he told David, come and put your name. Even though I went to fight, come and put your name on the cities, because I serve as a king. Learn when you begin achieving great things, greatness, to always honor the king. You are not competing with him. You are not a parallel kingdom. Honor the king. Give your life to protect the king. Be a cupbearer of the king. Be faithful and defend the king with your life. And celebrate the king publicly and spiritedly. That is why we give only God worship. That is why we are not ashamed to come publicly and come and give him worship and lift up our hands. We appreciate him and speak well to him. When we have opportunities, we do not defame him and speak negatively about his kingdom and about his church, but we honor him with our speech. Why? Because the king is above all. We are not here to expose the king. We honor him. You see, and the word honor is very interesting because he has, in Proverbs chapter 9, I believe, it says, honor the Lord with thy substance. With thy substance. There are many people, you work in a place, you've never said happy birthday to your boss. You've never given your boss a gift. You've never honored him with a gift. Your boss who has been teaching you the work. Your boss who has been writing appraisal for you. Your boss who has been showing you things that he doesn't teach other people. One of the things you don't do. Some people say, hey, after all, do you think I came to the office to come and just work for my boss? He has money. No. You see, there's a place of honor. It brings you favor. The Bible said, honor the Lord, so shall thy bands. So when you honor, there's a reciprocal effect on your life. Your boss in the office is celebrating his birthday. Your boss has a funeral. Your boss' child has a wedding. You see, honor him. And don't be in a hurry always to leave. Give him honor. Show him some respect. Not because he's A or B or C, but because at a certain point he's king and he's boss in your life. If you want to obtain favor, if you want to be promoted, if you want to be able to bypass and get far, this is not democracy. It's called honor the king. Honor the king. Love the brotherhood. Honor all men. Learn how to give people respect. Learn how to show yourself pleasing. Learn how to support people. Build a habit and a character of honoring people. You've sat under the same ministry for 10 years. You've never. You've been blessed by somebody's teaching from day one. All you know from a child till now. Your parents have watched over you and given you food from day one till now. You see, honor your father and your mother. Honor. Now you've become big. You are too big to serve. Honor. When your daddy eats, go and take his bowls and just bring him water, wash his hands and give him some sweet. Your mother, they can afford it, but they want to feel that honor. If you ever get to a point where you think you are equal, you see, a blessing can only flow from a higher height down. Immediately you make it the same, it stops flowing. So anybody who is going to bless you, you place the person on a higher pedestal so the thing can flow down. Immediately becomes parallel. It stops flowing. If you want to tap into anointing from God, place him above you so that he can bless you. If you want to be blessed by my ministry, you see, you cannot come in with a certain attitude. No, you place it. If you want your teachers to help you, place them above. You don't go into your classroom and insult all teachers. No. Place him above. If you are going to survive in the palace is a very nebulous maze to traverse. It's full of landmines. Some people go up to a certain point and then they are cut off. But we are going to go because God's prophecy, God's word is that he has called us to be the head and not the tail. I pray the blessing of headship over your life. I pray that you rise up and head the media, the family systems in the country, the political and governance systems, the finance and business and economy. But you've got to learn how to start managing yourself wisely. I know you are a cell leader. You aspire to be a pastor. But you've got to start learning how to manage yourself wisely. It's not just preaching. Beyond your certificate, it's not just passing exams. Beyond your certificate and your first class and second upper and your master's or whatever it is, there's also things you need to learn. Because your certificate just gives you an entrance. How you survive depends on you and what you know. There are three things, and I'm just ending. The workplace is a very interesting place. You see, many people think that there are a lot of demons are in church. True. But the demons don't originate from the church. The demons originate from outside. And they bring them into the church. Listen carefully. If you are going to do well in life, you've got to understand the home. You've got to understand your workplace. And you've got to understand the church. In your life, I prophesy to you, the most important place you will spend your life is in your work. And that is where you'll be attacked a lot. Because it is only by your work that you generate wealth to be able to enjoy life. Your family is where you are born. They will teach you and bring you up in moral behavior and things as you grow up to the age of around 6, 7. From there, the education system takes over. And then the rest of your life, major years of your life, will be spent working. That is where you are going to meet demons. That is where you are going to come under attack. That is why this message I'm preaching You've got to understand it. Because you are starting a business. How do you grow your business from a small business, tabletop business, into a huge mall? You've got to understand how to walk. As for church, the things we bring from outside is what we deal with. But when you leave this place, you are going back into the world. We are just spending 1 hour, 2 hours. So if you don't learn how to manage yourself, that's why he says, I am sending you into the world. I'm not sending you into the church. The church is training you, but it's sending you out to be able to behave like wise men, like sheep amongst wolves. So that you'll be able to, because the real wickedness is out there. In 1 John, he says that the whole world lieth in wickedness. So we understand that the church is not your problem. He says, I'm sending you as salt to the earth. It means that the salt must engage the earth. You see, salt by itself is useless. But when salt is put into the soup, light by itself is useless. But when light is put into darkness, so you know that God says, I'm sending you into darkness. Where you are going is dark. Behave yourself wisely. You will dispel the darkness. You will overcome them. But you behave yourself wisely with the wisdom that comes from above. Are you with me this morning? So it's important for us. Listen, if there's any message I've preached, that my heart, thy kingdom come and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And when I look at Daniel, I look at Esther, I look at Nehemiah, I look at Joseph, I look at Moses, all the patriarchs of our faith, I see all these things in them. How they managed stagecraft, how they honored the king, when they had to, when they didn't fight, when they ran away, when they stayed behind. Sometimes I see people who are doing very well, and then all of a sudden they get into the corridors of power. They are so inebriated with power that it destroys them. That is why we say that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Young man, you'll be tempted with power. You become the best singer one day, and you get a lot of fans. Whether you that humility will take you forward, or it will become your last stop where to derail you, depends on you. I know you are the new latest artist in town. Everybody is jamming, and all of them are saying, and there's power to misuse. But you can decide, there are things before me, and I'm not going to allow what I have to be my last stop and to derail me. May God give us wisdom to manage ourselves and behave ourselves wisely. Wherever you are, may you grow and manage your statecraft and be faithful to the King of Kings, who has called you with a heavenly calling. May your calling abide. May your impact be generational and significant. May you influence nations. May you go beyond your Jerusalem into Judea, into Samaria, and into the uttermost parts of the earth. May the kingdom of God come. May his will be done on this earth as it is in heaven. May we surrender our kingdoms to the heavenly kingdom. And may God have free course. May his glory fill the earth. May God take you to a place beyond your imagination. May you cross every limitation and boundary. May you overcome your shortcomings. May the Lord give you favor. 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 Even when you are a stranger in a foreign land, may you find favor. Even when kings are set against you, may you find favor. May your reign outlive the kings you serve. May you be like a Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar passes away. Belteshazzar passes away. Darius is gone and Cyrus is gone, but you still remain. 1,000 may fall on your right hand, 10,000 on your left. It shall not come nigh you. Why? Because the king, you serve the king. His throne is an eternal throne. May our kingdom, may the kingdom of our God rule and reign in our lives. Let's just share a word of prayer wherever you are. You want to just pray for yourself in the name of Jesus. Wherever you are, the stage you are, may God bring you before kings. May God establish your feet. May God give you wisdom to manage your life. May you grow in favor with the king. May you rise into the heights that God wants you to be. And may you step up for such a time like this in the kingdom. May wealth be in your hands. May favor, may the wisdom of God guide you. May honor be yours, and may you honor people. May you honor people. May you remember Mordecai. May you keep the faith. May you stand strong, that even when you are Esther and you've married the king, your faith is still intact. Your faith is still intact. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Thank you, Jesus. Pastor Mansa, give us a song. Let's worship. Casting crowns. Today, we want to cast our crowns before him. We want to lift our heads before him. We want to rise again as a church and as a people.
Crowns,
just lift up your hands. In your family, wherever you are, just lift it up. Surrender and just let's worship the King.
It's
there is a King who deserves to be worshipped. In the name of Jesus. In the name of Jesus.
Casting crowns,
lifting heads,
and lifting hands,
bowing hearts,
bowing hearts.
It's all we've come to do.
It's all we've come to do.
Adonai, Adonai. Lift it up again. Adonai, yeah, Adonai. You reign on high. You reign on high.
Casting crowns,
casting crowns,
lifting hands, and bowing hearts is all we've come to do. Oh, Adonai,
Adonai, Adonai,
Adonai,
your name, Adonai, Adonai, you reign on high. We will rise in your name. Adonai. Come on, lift up your hands wherever you are. Let's worship the Lord our God. We will rise.
We will rise in your name.
You are Adonai, Adonai. You reign on high. Casting crowns, come on.
Casting crowns,
lifting hands,
lifting hands,
bowing hearts.
bowing hearts.
It's all we've come to. Casting crowns, let's cast it down. Casting crowns,
casting crowns.